Welcome to New True Crime Story, where we dive deep into real cases that reveal the darkest corners of the human soul. If you're into true crime stories that are raw, real, and unforgettable, you're in the right place. So grab a seat, maybe even a strong cup of coffee, and settle in. And hey, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. We're on a mission to reach 10,000 subscribers this month, and with your help, we're almost there. Trust me, the rest of this case will leave you speechless. Let's dive in.
July 28, 1996, was a normal summer day in South England. Captain John Copic and his son readied themselves for a day of fishing on their Brixham trawler, Mulcahy. After a day of unsuccessful hauls, father and son ventured further into a place called the Roughs. After weighing down the mad and tossing it overboard, they waited. Both men felt the familiar drag of a heavy catch. Copic assumed they must have caught a big fish and decided it was time to bring the net back to the surface. However, it was not a fish. Scrummed, the men watched as the dead body of a man flopped onto their deck. Copic immediately alerted the Brixham Coast Guard. The body was badly decomposed. It had been in the ocean for some time. It had been nibbled on by fish, but was impeccably dressed in a long-sleeve shirt, corduroy pants, and brown shoes. Police noted that his pockets had been turned out. There was no identification on him. The only identifying features on the John Doe were a badly smudged tattoo on his right hand and a Rolex watch on his wrist. The body was transported to the medical examiner's office in Devon. The man was estimated to be between 40 and 50 years old. The tattoo looked like a cluster of stars. The only serious injury had been to his head. It was not fatal, and Matt, along with other bruising, seemed consistent with being dragged along the seabed before being pulled up into the boat. His lungs were filled with water. It was ruled a drowning, a common occurrence in the area given the English Channel was just off the coastline. Police believed he may have fallen overboard during one of the ferry crossings. The only other possible way forward was to identify him through dental records. If he was a British citizen, they'd be on record, and so the examiner did just that, but it would take a while. It was by chance a mortuary technician noticed the man's watch. It was a Rolex Oyster self-winding watch that was fully waterproof and required motion to remain active for 48 hours at a time. It was also possible to trace the ownership if it was an original. Examining the watch, investigators were able to determine that the man had drowned on July 20, 1996, as the calendar feature showed the date July 22nd. They were also able to find a hidden serial number between the wristband and watch face. This number was sent off to Rolex to determine if it was an original and had been serviced by the owner. In the meantime, the John Doe was dubbed the Rolex Man, and the mystery deepened. Several weeks later, through records kept by Rolex, investigators received a name: Ronald Joseph Platt. The medical examiner also received the dental records to corroborate this evidence. Ronald Joseph Platt was a 51-year-old TV repairman. Records state that he was born in Calgary, Canada in 1945 before his family moved to Britain. He was unmarried and had once served as a soldier in the British Army as part of his national service. Close friends described him as a quiet and introverted man who had a passion for his native country, Canada. He was also interested in electronics and precision engineering, something which led to him buying a Rolex in Germany in 1967. It was one of his most prized possessions, and his ex-partners said Platt would not even take his watch off to shower. Using this information, investigators needed to find out exactly who Platt was and how he ended up tangled in a fishing trawler. Detective Constable Ian Clenahan of the Devon and Cornwall Police was assigned to the case from the initial discovery. Police were able to discover that Platt's last known address was in Essex, hundreds of miles from where his body was found. Clenahan made contact with the Essex Police Department. Detective Sergeant Peter Redmond offered to visit the address to help with the case. When Redmond visited the property, it was vacant. Redmond contacted the landlord to explain that the owner had moved some time ago, but provided the detective with a reference letter. The letter contained the forwarding address and contact number of one David Davis. Calling the number provided, Redmond was able to reach out to Davis. the detective inquired about Platt and Davis's relationship before explaining that the body they discovered in Devon was possibly that of his friend. Davis agreed to pay the Essex police a visit. Redmond met with Davis and found him to be an amiable person who seemed quite confident. However, he was quiet and did not ask many questions about Platt's death or discovery. When prompted, Davis explained that he and Platt had been friends for several years. Davis told Redmond that he hadn't seen Platt in over 3 months. The last time they'd met, he'd loaned him money to start an electrical business in France. As far as Davis knew, Platt had been living in France all this time. During the interview, Redmond learned that the tattoo on Platt's hand was in fact a maple leaf, the national symbol of Canada. Davis explained Platt's love for the country. Having given all the information he could, Davis left the station, promising to send Detective Redmond a photo of Platt. Days later, Redmond received the photo as promised. Police in Essex were able to wrap up the investigation on their end, landing on the theory that Platt fell overboard and drowned along the channel. This fit the story told by Davis. It was just an unfortunate accident. As the Essex case wrapped up, Clenaghan needed to tie up the loose end on his side. He tried contacting Davis several times, but was unsuccessful. He turned to his colleague Redmond in Essex to help make contact with Davis. Agreeing to this, Redmond paid Davis a visit at his home in Woodham Walter. It was a rural part of Essex with only 4 houses. These houses were not numbered traditionally, but rather each had a name. He knocked on the first door and an elderly couple answered. When they asked Redmond who he was looking for, he gave them the name David Davis. The couple then informed him their neighbor was not Davis, but Ron Platt. They went on to describe Platt to Redmond, and he realized that they were talking about the same man he had met with previously. Redmond knew something was wrong here. He contacted Clenaghan back in Devon and explained how, by sheer chance, he just unmasked another chapter to the story. Detectives from both counties now knew there was more to the story than met the eye. Redmond started focusing on gathering information about the man who was posing as his dead friend. He revisited the elderly couple he came to know as Frank and Aubrey. They told him the tale of Ron Platt and his rather young wife and 2 little children. They also mentioned that Platt and his family had often vacationed in Devon as they had a yacht down there. The name, though, escaped them. In Devon, Clenaghan too started re-examining the evidence and began by questioning old witnesses. His first stop was John Coppic. When questioned, Coppic told him that the neck dragged up a 10-pound anchor along with Platt's body. Coppic gave the anchor to a friend, who then gave it to his mother to sell. Fortunately, the anchor remained unsold, and investigators were able to retrieve and bag the anchor as evidence. For Clenaghan, the next stop was interviewing those who knew Platt. He contacted Platt's brother Brian, who told them about Elaine Boyes. Boyes was Platt's ex-partner. They'd been together for 13 years. Investigators paid Boyes a visit and discovered the connection between Platt and Davis. Boyes met Davis in 1991 while working as a receptionist at the Fine Arts Auctioneer in Harrogate, England. She remembered Davis being tall, engaging, and charming. They spoke about Davis moving to Yorkshire and the topic veered toward employment. Davis wanted Boyes to work for his company. She explained that it wouldn't be for long, as she and Platt were planning on relocating to Canada. Charming his way in, Davis told Boyes that he could help her and Platt save up to make the move to Canada. It was not long before Boyes began working as an executive assistant for Davis. She then introduced Platt to Davis, and the 2 men developed a fast friendship. The couple were mesmerized by Davis's grandiose stories and admired his lavish lifestyle. Davis made them an offer to be directors of his company, the Cavendish Corporation. Initially, Boyes was hesitant about the offer. Davis explained his reasons for not wanting to have his name linked to the business. He alleged that his ex-wife was a wealthy doctor living in New York who still demanded he pay alimony. By now, the couple developed a trusting relationship with Davis and believed their friend was truly trying to keep his wife at bay. Davis had both Boyes and Platt traveling to Europe to broker deals for him and slowly pulled them into the web he was weaving. They deposited money for him into various foreign bank accounts, never questioning David or his motives. He was trustworthy, a man of religion, and in their eyes, infallible.
Hold up. Before we dive any deeper, just one quick favor. Kindly subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We want to hit 10,000 subscribers this month, and we're just a few steps away from it. You could be the one to help us cross that line. This channel is growing thanks to amazing people like you. And trust me, what's coming next is something you don't want to miss.
On Christmas Day, 1992, Davis invited the couple to spend the day with them and his daughter, Noelle. After enjoying the hearty meal, they sat down to exchange gifts. Boya's car was the ultimate gift. Davis had made a promise to buy the couple 2 tickets to Canada if they were willing to use them before February 1993. For Boyas, it seemed a bit overwhelming with a short notice, but Klatt was on cloud 9. His lifelong dream of returning to Canada was being realized thanks to this generous man he had come to call a true friend. Davis convinced them that it was better they get a start on their new life sooner than later. Davis wasted no time in preparing for their imminent departure. He suggested to both Boyas and Platt to have rubber stamps of their signatures made in case he needed to sign any documents urgently. He'd also keep their driver's licenses with him in case proof of identity was required. This didn't seem a tall order for the couple because they trusted Davis, saying he'd just given them the start they needed. And so, in February of 1993, Boyas and Platts jetted off to Canada to begin their new lives. Canada did not offer the greener grass that the couple had expected. They'd landed in the country in the middle of winter. Work was scarce, and financial troubles soon turned into relationship problems. Boyas and Klatt tried to make it work, but the growing tension created a rift, and they soon drifted apart. 5 months later, Boyas returned to England to attend her sister's wedding as a bridesmaid. She had no intention of returning to Canada. Having become family friends, Davis was also invited to the wedding. There, he spoke to Boyas and inquired after Platt. He was upset after hearing that Boyas was not returning to Canada and that she and Platt had ended their relationship. Davis tried convincing Boyas to give Platt in Canada a second chance. When she refused, Davis suddenly changed tactics. He soon packed up his life and family and left Boyas with a mobile number. Their friendship dissolved, and soon the calls disappeared as well. Platt and Boyas, too, were no longer in contact. Since leaving Canada, she'd not had any contact with her ex-lover Platt or her once dear friend Davis. So when Davis contacted Boyas late in 1996, she didn't think much of the impromptu conversation, as they barely had anything to say to each other after all that time. He mentioned nothing about Platt, and that was that. He failed to inform her that Platt was dead. After the interview was over, Boyas told police she now had her suspicions that Davis was somehow involved in Platt's death. Boyas provided the vital link between Davis and Platt, but investigators needed more definitive clues. They began talking to witnesses. After the wedding in Harrogate, Davis made a quick escape with his family to Devon. There, he began introducing himself as Ron Platt. His daughter was pregnant, and so he introduced people to her as his wife, sometimes calling her Elaine Boyas, other times Noelle Platt. It was also common knowledge that Davis owned a yacht. Adding further suspicion was that witnesses said they had seen Platt and Davis together a month before Platt's body was discovered. They'd allegedly booked into the Steam Packet Inn as brothers David and Ronald Platt. By now, police knew Davis was lying about Platt in his knowledge about his death. They needed a final bit of evidence, though. Looking into mobile records, Davis's numbers showed that calls had been made from the same area that the medical examiner estimated the drowning of Platt occurred. Essex police planned a sting operation to arrest Davis on suspicion of Platt's murder. They waited for him to arrive at the Chelmsford train station after being tipped off by Boyas, who agreed to meet Davis for coffee. He, however, evaded them. Redmond, though, was tenacious and decided to drive by the family home. There he noticed activity, but he did not pounce immediately, calling for backup instead. There was the assumption that Davis might be armed. As they prepared to make their move, a taxi pulled up to the driveway and Davis made a quick getaway as the taxi sped off. Police gave chase and Davis was eventually apprehended. With a gun trained on him, Davis surrendered without incident. Little did police know this was only the tip of the iceberg. Davis was arrested and his fingerprints taken. Running them through an international database revealed another twist to an already thickening plot. The prints came back belonging to a man named Albert Johnson Walker. He was ranked number 4 on Interpol's wanted list and was Canada's most wanted fugitive. Walker's story begins in Canada 6 years before Platt's body was discovered in the Atlantic Ocean. Born in Hamilton, Ontario on August 9, 1945, Walker always dreamed big. He was a high school dropout with a larger-than-life presence. He worked as a bank teller and spent much of his free time socializing in Ontario. It was during a social event he met his ex-wife, Barbara MacDonald. After a whirlwind romance spanning all of 4 days, he proposed to her and they married in 1968. They started a family early, having 3 girls and 4 boys. They raised the family in Paris, Ontario. After years of helping other people with financial solutions, Walker started a freelance bookkeeping business with Barbara. Business thrived, and within 10 years he was operating 6 branches, employing over 30 people. Friends eagerly invested with him. All the while, he was siphoning their money into offshore accounts in both the Cayman Islands and Switzerland. Soon, the cracks started to appear. His marriage broke down following his numerous affairs. The people he was stealing from started asking questions, and in 1990, Walker decided it was time to leave before it all blew up. Telling friends he was taking their then 15-year-old daughter, Sheena, for a skiing trip to Europe, he made his escape. Barbara realized what was going on and, fearing for her daughter's safety, declared her a missing person. Police were on his trail, but it abruptly ended in London. He adopted a new identity stolen from a client. He was now going by David Wallace Davis, and Sheena became Noel. Although he evaded authorities, the name David Davis still linked him back to his true identity. He needed to find a new identity, and the opportunity presented himself when he met Ronald Platt. Platt kept a very small circle of friends and was obsessed with living in Canada. Walker used this knowledge to his advantage. The wheels were in motion, and Walker finally had the identity he needed. But plans fell through when Platt contacted Walker in 1995. Life in Canada was not the dream he foresaw. He informed Walker that he was moving back to Essex to settle near Davis. The solid foundation Walker was curating started to, again, crack at the edges. Having 2 Ronald Platts in the same area with the same birth details was not going to work well for Walker. So he hatched a plan. Walker had purchased a yacht and named her Lady Jane. He'd taken his family and Platt down to Tutney's in Devon to celebrate the launch of the vessel. While there, the men purchased a new 10-pound anchor, which, ironically, became vital evidence in the investigation. After returning to Essex, Walker invited Platt for another weekend down in Devon, just 2 friends enjoying the coast and some fishing. Walker sailed the Lady Jane out into open water, a safe distance from any onlookers on shore. He then hit Platt over the head with the anchor, knocking him unconscious. Walker rummaged through his pockets to remove any identification before securing the anchor to his belt and tossing him over to a water grave. It was the perfect murder. Except, Walker made one crucial mistake. He forgot to remove the Rolex that unraveled a finely executed plot to escape justice. Walker's trial began in 1998. Evidence presented to the court included the anchor that was discovered in the naft with Platt's body. Forensic experts were able to determine that the injury on Platt's head was consistent with the shape of the anchor. There were also traces of zinc found on the belt of the pants that were consistent with the zinc on the anchor. Walker weighed Platt down by securing it to his belt. A search of Lady Jane yielded more physical evidence. Hairs matching of Platt were found on a cushion beyond. Platt's fingerprint was found on the carrier bag used to carry the anchor back to Lady Jane. Blood was found near the rails. At his home, Walker's habit of courting did him in, as documents were confiscated and used to prove his bogus business enterprises and trail of deception. It was, however, the testimonies of both Foyes and Sheena that were to be the final nails in his coffin. Foyes' testimony provided the court with evidence that Walker had much to lose if Ron Platt returned to England. Sheena, however, delivered the final blow. She was unable to provide a solid alibi for Walker on the weekend of the murder. She also confirmed he had been out on the yacht and looked disheveled and agitated when he returned late on the day of the murder. Sheena's testimony opened an entirely new chapter of the saga. She told the court of her life living in fear with her father, his ability to charm, and how she felt as much of a victim as anyone else who crossed his path. When Walker took the stand, he presented a very charming persona to the court. He said that Sheena begged him to take her along. He admitted to fraud and to other crimes, but denied killing Platt. The blood found on the yacht was due to Platt bumping his head while they were out fishing, he said. Yet the jury saw through the lies and took just 2 hours to find him guilty. High Court Justice Neil Butterfield addressed Walker, stating, "The killing was carefully planned and cunningly executed with chilling efficiency. You are a plausible, intelligent, and ruthless man who poses a serious threat to anyone who stands in your way." He was sentenced to 15 years to life. In 2005, he was allowed to return to Canada to serve out a sentence. In 2007, aged 61, he was given an additional 4 years to run concurrently with his sentence. In 2015, he filed an application for parole, but withdrew it at the last moment. Now, at age 75, the Parole Board of Canada has denied him his freedom by revoking his application for day and full parole. He was also denied his request to go to Vancouver Island unaccompanied or a personal development program. It's likely he will never taste freedom again. Walker did, indeed, execute an almost perfect crime. However, karma has a way of catching up. Had it not been for Rollo Platt's genuine Rolex and a string of events that occurred by sheer chance, he may have gotten away with it.
Thanks for staying with us to the end of this gripping story. If you found this true crime case as chilling and thought-provoking as we did, please share, and subscribe to support the channel. It helps more than you know. And if you'd like to go the extra mile and help keep the channel running, consider buying us a coffee. You'll find a link in the description below. Every bit goes a long way in bringing you more real, raw, and unforgettable true crime stories. Until next time, stay safe, stay curious, and never stop seeking the truth.